Hello, I'm Dan Drake, and this is Geno Channel 99. Our guest for this segment is Tara Riley, the town of Nantucket shellfish biologist. Welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
With 2 weeks of the family season under our belt, so to speak, or under our waders, what's your assessment of what's going on out there?
Most of the information right now is coming from word of mouth, people coming up to me or contacting the office and just, saying how things are going or letting us know where seed is. The Marine Department's doing a really good job in checking recreational folks this year, so we're getting a more accurate idea of, what's coming out of the water and where it's coming from and the different sizes in different places. So from what I've heard, in most places, it's been really good.
Have you been yourself?
Of course. I scuba dive though, so it's a little bit easier, I think, when you're diving. Nantucket Harbor, there's definitely some great areas. They're having some issues though with this algae called Lingbia, and there's really not a lot known about it. It's kind of a new thing to Nantucket, but because of the warm winter and the warm waters, we have an increased algae growth.
This is what they're calling the black slime?
Right, so we're kind of hoping that it will lift eventually when the water gets a little cooler, but I have a feeling it's definitely going to affect the commercial season, and we'll hear some complaints with the clogging of the dredges and issues like that.
Although, from what I've heard, there are scallops underneath those.
There are scallops underneath, and when you dive on it, it's interesting because you can definitely feel them, but everything under there is kind of black and anaerobic, so that's not usually a good thing. It's almost like it can suffocate whatever's going on underneath there. Now, I was in Matticat yesterday diving, and I didn't see it in multiple places, so that's kind of a good thing. And there's a lot of scallops in Warren's Landing right now, so I think that's going to be a really good spot.
That's my prime spot, and I haven't been able to go this year, unfortunately.
I recommend it. It's still loaded, definitely.
You've been running a propagation program for what, 3 years now, down at the Brant Point Boathouse.
Yeah.
What has been the impact of that program as best you can do? Well, let me ask, can you determine what the impact of that program is?
It's, it is kind of hard to tell, but when I first came here, we started out with a really low budget. We had $10,000, and we were able to produce, I think we did a release of 5 million bay scallop larvae, and that was kind of a pilot program. It happened late in the year, so we weren't able to evaluate it. So for the last 2 years, we've continued the program and increased our production, and now we're just getting to the evaluation of how it is over the past couple years. And so last year we released 70 million bay scallop larvae, and this year we did over 170 million. So our production is definitely doubling and going up with our increased funding and help and efforts. It's just a matter of really fine-tuning the whole evaluation for this type of program. We do our dive transects at the end of every year to kind of see where these scallops are that we release. But really we rely on the commercial fishermen to get out there during the season and put all their dredges out there and tow different areas, and they'll let us know where pockets of seed are, where they ended up, because they don't always stay where you put them.
Right.
They drift with the currents and everything. So it's really kind of there are lots of pieces to the puzzle to figure this whole program out.
It sounds, from what I've heard, like Matticat Harbor is the place, at least for the recreational scalloper, this year. And is this the first year that you have, or was last year the first year that you put larvae in Matticat Harbor?
Yep, last year we did 2 releases in Warren's Landing. So it's pretty interesting that Warren's Landing's loaded this year with a lot of uniform adult scallops. And so, we can't necessarily say, oh, that's from our efforts, but it is a good indicator.
But it's interesting because the eelgrass is further out for the most part. It's over to the west of the channel.
Yeah.
And so that means that at some point the larvae found its way over to the eelgrass, presumably.
Right.
And then came back.
Yep. Yeah.
So maybe there's a lot that fell into the channel too.
It's possible. We were in esters yesterday, diving esters, and up in that area, there's not a lot of habitat. It's mostly sand and kind of a mucky bottom. And there was a ton of seed up there, just in the sand, which is something you don't normally see. And so
I also understand there's a huge amount of both adult scallop and seed right outside the opening to Hither Creek.
Yes.
And that's a bit ironic given the feeling that Hither Creek is so foul, if you will, polluted.
Yep.
or maybe Hither Creek's gotten better, and we don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of seed in there. I think, you know, we're going to try and move most of that out so that it will, you know, have a little healthier
But obviously,
spot.
if there are a lot of adult scallops there too,
It's true.
They somehow manage to survive.
Yeah, maybe they'll clean it up and filter out that water.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be good.
In terms of in town, what are the hot spots for the family scallopers?
Oh, family scallopers. It kind of depends, you know, what type of access they have. I am a fan of Third Bend. There's a lot of adult scallops in there. It's really good for snorkeling and diving. Now, if you're push raking, a lot of people are over in Monomoy, and just off of Quays Road is supposed to be really good.
Yeah, I've heard Monomoy isn't that great.
No.
But, who knows? You know,
Yeah.
people don't always tell the truth
Maybe
either when they're talking about where the scallops
Yeah,
are.
I guess it depends on the scalloper too.
That's right. But it bodes well for the commercial season. Do you have any thoughts about what the total catch might be at this point?
I don't know what the total catch will be. I don't like to make predictions, but you know, I'll be happy if it's similar to last year. As long as the numbers stay consistent or they go up a little bit, I think that's a good sign for Nantucket. You know, there's always going to be problems with the fishery, and this year I think you're going to hear a lot about the meats are smaller. I mean, you can just tell when you open the scallops, and the recreational folks will tell you too that the meats are a lot smaller this year, and you know, that could have a lot to do with the warm winter, or it could have a lot to do with the rust tide that we had that was in August and September this year. I think it probably affected their feeding, and you know, that algae isn't very nutritious for shellfish, so I think
how deep down do bay scallops go and survive?
I mean, you can find them anywhere in the harbor. They don't necessarily prosper, you know, up in the head of the harbor where it's really deep, but you know, as long as the light can penetrate down, you know, there's good habitat, you can find them.
One of the things I've heard about Little Neck and the entrance to Hither Creek out in Madaket is that the scallops are small for the push rakers, but if you get out into the area where the water is lapping over the top of your waders, that the scallops are bigger.
Yeah.
Is that a function of slightly deeper water?
I mean, I think it can depend on the circulation and the flow. You know, in shallower water, it's probably not as great. But, you know, there's different levels of food in different depths and different areas.
You took a trip to Zanzibar last year to a hatchery there, and I understand you're going again.
I am.
What did you learn from that, and why are you going again?
Well, it's a program associated with Woods Hole, and also Island Creek Oysters in Duxbury is kind of the main funder for the trip. But it's a program that provides shellfish for women in coastal areas to grow out and sell for money and an alternative source of protein in that area.
What sort of shellfish?
They're called blood arcs, so it's a type of clam. And they also work with oysters, but mostly the focus is on this blood arc. And so Woods Hole started a hatchery in Stonetown, which is, Stonetown is kind of the main city on the island of Zanzibar. And there's about 1 million people on this island. And so the hatchery's been going for about 3 years, and you know, it's a third world country, so you know, each little step that you can make is a success, and it's definitely slow going. But last year we were able to do about 3 successful spawns and start to grow them out, but you know, there are definitely obstacles there, such as water quality and power outages and just lots of issues going on. So it's an ongoing project, and we're invited to go back again this year. My intern, Leah Cabral, who's been working with me all summer, was also invited to go.
Great.
And so we'll both be heading over there for about 5 weeks, and then I'll be back for Christmas, and then she's going to continue the project and go back.
Was there anything you could bring back from that experience to your efforts here in Nantucket?
Definitely bring back a lot of patience and a lot of appreciation for what we have here. It's weird because the hatchery there operates on a low budget. We also don't, you know, have the biggest budget available either. So there's a lot of similarities between the two places. And you know, if the power goes out in Zanzibar, you have to rely on natural methods for spawning. You have to wait for the sun. And we actually did a spawn this year out at the boathouse out on the dock, you know, relying on the sun. And it was kind of cool to know that you could do something that didn't involve energy.
In terms of the future, what do you think over time the fishery here is viable and sustainable?
I think it will be. You know, Nantucket's a really progressive community, so I have a lot of faith in knowing that these programs are going well for the health of the harbor. And, you know, our program's going really well, but we also rely on things like, you know, improved water quality and the fertilizer articles and stuff like that to help us along. And so as long as we all work together, I think everything's going to end up on a positive note.
How much is your budget?
It changes from year to year.
Well, most of it's private, right?
Most of it's private.
Money,
We
private.
rely on the sale of commercial and recreational shellfish licenses go towards my program. And then we have the, you know, definite grants that we apply for, like through the Great Harbor Yacht Club, Nantucket Shellfish Association. And last year the Land Council worked with us to sponsor some tours for the boathouse, which gave us a pretty good amount of money to work with for this year. So we're always looking for outside sources to help out with our efforts.
What is the most satisfying about your job?
I guess the most satisfying thing about my job is just the people I get to work with on a daily basis. I love working with the fishermen, and it's really great to, you know, get reactions from them and their appreciation for hard work that you do during the season. And it's a wonderful community, and you know, scallops are great. Everyone loves them, so it's a really great.
They sure do.
It's a great job to have,
Good.
definitely.
Well, it's great to have you with us today, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.